The room fell completely silent. Crystal glasses stopped clinking. Business executives forgot the million-dollar contracts lying in front of them. A waitress nearly dropped her tray. For 7 long years, little Grace Whitmore had never spoken a single word, not to doctors, therapists, teachers, or even to her own mother. But the moment she looked into the calm blue eyes of a stranger sitting quietly in the corner of the charity gala, she whispered 4 words that changed every life in the room forever. "You're finally home, Daddy." The stranger wasn't her father. He was a widowed Navy SEAL. And the billionaire mother standing only a few feet away felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can heal wounds that money never can, please take a second to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to the channel. Every story here is a reminder that hope often arrives when we least expect it. The city of Boston, Massachusetts, sparkled beneath thousands of lights as America's wealthiest families gathered for the annual Whitmore Children's Foundation Gala. Reporters crowded the entrance, eager to photograph Victoria Whitmore, one of the youngest female billionaires in the country. To the public, Victoria had everything. She owned one of America's fastest-growing medical technology companies, lived in a waterfront mansion, appeared on magazine covers, and donated millions to children's hospitals every year. Yet behind every smile stood a mother carrying an unbearable sorrow. Her 8-year-old daughter, Grace, had not spoken since the tragic accident that claimed her father's life when she was barely a year old. Doctors diagnosed selective mutism caused by severe emotional trauma. Therapists tried every modern treatment available. Specialists flew in from across the United States. Nothing worked. Grace communicated only through drawings, tiny smiles, and gentle nods. Victoria often lay awake wondering if she would ever hear her daughter's voice. Across the ballroom sat another guest who attracted almost no attention. Michael Carter preferred it that way. The 40-year-old former Navy SEAL wore a simple Navy suit that barely concealed years of military discipline. His shoulders carried invisible scars from overseas deployments that no one could see. 3 years earlier, Michael had buried his wife, Rebecca, after she lost her battle with cancer. Since then, he had devoted his life to raising his 6-year-old son, Noah, while working as a security consultant for veterans organizations. Unlike many guests chasing powerful connections, Michael accepted the invitation only because proceeds supported military families and children recovering from trauma. He quietly watched people celebrate success while remembering friends who never returned home. Grace wandered away from the children's activity table carrying her sketchbook. She ignored the entertainers, ignored the expensive toys, ignored everyone. Then she noticed Michael sitting alone. Something inside her small heart became strangely peaceful. Without hesitation, she walked toward him. Victoria immediately stood. Her security team prepared to intercept Grace before she disturbed another guest. But Michael simply smiled warmly. He lowered himself to one knee without saying a word. Grace stared into his eyes for nearly 30 seconds. Neither moved. Neither blinked. The entire ballroom seemed to pause. Then, for the first time in 7 years, Grace spoke. Softly, clearly. "You're finally home, Daddy." The silence that followed felt endless. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered across the marble floor. Tears instantly flooded her eyes. Doctors standing nearby froze in disbelief. Guests looked at one another, wondering if they had imagined what they had just heard. Michael himself looked completely overwhelmed. He gently shook his head. "I think she misses someone very much." Grace slowly reached out and held his hand. She smiled. It was the brightest smile Victoria had seen since before the accident. Over the following weeks, something extraordinary began happening. Grace never called Michael Daddy again. Instead, she simply wanted to spend time with him. At first, Victoria hesitated. She worried about becoming emotionally dependent on a stranger. But every therapist encouraged her not to interrupt the remarkable breakthrough. Michael never forced conversations. He never asked Grace difficult questions. He never treated her like a patient. Instead, they walked through parks, fed ducks near the Charles River, built birdhouses, read adventure books together. Sometimes they sat for an hour without speaking. And somehow, that silence healed what years of therapy could not. Michael understood something few people realized. During combat, he had learned that broken people rarely needed perfect words. They needed someone willing to stay beside them long enough for trust to grow. He recognized the same fear in Grace's eyes that he had once seen in traumatized children rescued from war zones. Not fear of people, fear of losing people. So he never promised forever. He simply showed up. Every single time. Rain or sunshine. Busy or exhausted. If Grace expected him, Michael arrived. Slowly, one sentence became two. Then three. Soon Grace laughed. The sound echoed through Victoria's home like music forgotten for years. Housekeepers quietly cried outside the room. Victoria stood in the hallway covering her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Money had purchased the world's greatest doctors. Consistency had accomplished what wealth never could. Victoria herself also began changing. She had spent years believing strength meant never showing weakness. Running a billion-dollar company demanded perfection. Raising Grace alone demanded even more. But Michael reminded her that courage wasn't pretending everything was fine. Real courage meant allowing others to help carry the burden. For the first time since her husband's death, Victoria admitted how lonely she truly felt. Not because she lacked friends, but because everyone admired the billionaire. Almost no one saw the exhausted mother. Michael did. Without judgment. Without expectation. Months passed. News spread that Grace had started speaking in school. Teachers celebrated. Doctors published case studies. Children who once believed Grace disliked them now discovered a funny, thoughtful little girl who loved painting birds and reading history books. One afternoon, Grace handed Michael a drawing. It showed three people standing beneath an American flag. A mother, a little girl, and a man wearing a Navy uniform. Above them, she had carefully written, "Family isn't always born. Sometimes God sends it." Michael quietly folded the picture and placed it inside his wallet. It never left. Not everyone welcomed their growing friendship. Several corporate board members warned Victoria that becoming close to an ordinary widowed veteran might damage her public image. Investors suggested she keep her personal life private. Social media filled with rumors questioning Michael's intentions. Some claimed he wanted money. Others assumed he planned to marry into wealth. Michael never defended himself publicly. He simply stepped away. He believed Grace deserved peace more than he deserved happiness. When he quietly stopped visiting, Grace stopped smiling again. She returned to silence. Victoria finally understood the terrible mistake she had made by listening to public opinion instead of her own heart. She drove across Boston searching for Michael. Hours later, she found him helping disabled veterans rebuild homes damaged by storms. His hands were covered with sawdust. His clothes were stained with paint. He looked happier than any billionaire she had ever known. Victoria apologized with tears in her eyes. Michael simply smiled. He had survived war. Forgiveness came easier than resentment. But he asked only one question. "How's Grace?" Victoria couldn't answer. She only cried. Michael understood immediately. He climbed into his truck without another word. When Grace saw him walking toward the front door that evening, she ran faster than anyone believed possible. She wrapped her arms around him. Then she looked at her mother. For the first time, she spoke confidently before both adults. "I don't need another daddy." Michael's heart quietly sank. Grace continued, "I already have one in heaven." She took Michael's hand. "But I do need my hero." Every adult in the room began crying. Even the security guards looked away to hide their tears. Life never became perfect. Healing never follows a straight line. There were difficult days, painful anniversaries, moments when grief returned unexpectedly, but they faced those storms together. Michael eventually accepted a leadership role, directing national programs, helping military families recover from trauma. Victoria expanded her foundation to provide free mental health care for children who had experienced devastating loss. Grace grew into a confident young girl whose laughter filled every room she entered. And Noah finally gained the sister he had always wished for. The mansion that once echoed with silence became a home filled with bedtime stories, birthday celebrations, homework at the kitchen table, and ordinary moments more valuable than every fortune Victoria possessed. She finally realized that the greatest investment she ever made wasn't in technology, real estate, or the stock market. It was opening her heart to someone whose greatest wealth was compassion. If this story has touched your heart, please support the video by liking it, sharing it with your family and friends, and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing stories that remind the world that love, courage, and second chances still exist. Speech balloon special request. Before the story ends, tell us in the comments, what do you think truly healed Grace? Michael's military courage, his quiet patience, or simply unconditional love? Because sometimes miracles don't begin with extraordinary words. Sometimes they begin with someone who simply chooses to stay. And in a world that often measures people by their wealth, success, or status, the greatest heroes remain those who quietly mend broken hearts without asking for anything in return. That night, as Victoria watched Grace laughing beside Michael and Noah beneath the stars outside their Boston home, she whispered a prayer of gratitude. She finally understood that while money could build hospitals, buy mansions, and change industries, only genuine love could restore a child's voice. And the silent little girl who once lived trapped inside fear became living proof that healing often arrives disguised as an ordinary person carrying extraordinary kindness. From that day forward, every sunrise reminded them that the strongest families are not always created by blood, but by faith, sacrifice, loyalty, and hearts willing to love again after unimaginable loss.